Splice Original.
How important is pastoral leadership? Or how important was pastoral leadership to you in this process of discovering who you are?
Pastoral leadership for me has been paramount. It has been vital. Without a pastor, without you, Pastor Moore, I would never know who God made me to be. 1 Corinthians 12:18, God has set the members. He has placed them in the body just as it has pleased him. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 12, he connects me to a pastor teacher, and it's through the pastor teacher that you have equipped me. You have gotten me ready for ministry. You've helped to unlock and undiscover some things in me that I never knew were there. And through obedience to you, that gave birth to purpose. So without a pastor, there's no purpose. So God places you, then he connects you to a pastor, and the placement plus the pastor equals purpose. And I believe, Pastor Moore, that there are people out there who want to know their purpose, that desire to know their purpose. They may have a placement, but they're overlooking the pastor.
Oh, Lord.
And without the pastor, you can't get to purpose.
You almost preach, man, in a minute. Of course, I agree with that, because seeing it live out is really, really gratifying to me. But let's talk about the idea of requirements, because this ministry has requirements. Matter of fact, some people, they are too much for someone. Some people, but they're all biblical. This ministry has requirements. This ministry has expectations. So how the requirements, or let me say it this way, biblical requirements and biblical expectations, how did that fit into you growing to the point where you are now?
Pastor Moore, there is a correlation between love and expectation. Whoever you love, you give them an expectation. I have 2 little girls at home. And particularly with my oldest daughter, Amarachi, there are expectations, because my goal is for her to grow up to become an adult that literally follows what her father has shared with her. And it amazes me, Pastor Moore. I expect her, when people speak to her, I expect her to speak back. I expect her to say thank you. My love for her imposes expectation. I believe that in the body of Christ, within the local assembly, love equates to expectation. Pastor Moore, you love me. You love every member here at Mount Zion. And through that, there is a biblical expectation, an expectation to be present in prayer service and Bible study, an expectation to be a Christian giver, an expectation to be in fulfillment hour, because all of those things coupled together will produce a growing, a vibrant Christian. So without the expectation, Pastor Moore, to obey God, without the biblical standard, I would not be who I am today. And so I thank God for you holding me accountable to the biblical standard, because the biblical standard produced who I am today.
Man, I think you're saying something there. Okay, here's another question I really want to push as it relates to it. And I think you broached the subject. So you showed up to the prayer service, the Bible study. You were a Christian giver. You did the things expected to you. But other people do those same things, and yet they still don't know. They show up, but they still don't know their purpose, and they're still struggling with the essentials of life. So what do you say to a person? Because somebody may be viewing like, well, man, I do that too. Well, I go to prayer service and I go to Bible study and I do all the stuff that is expected of me. And my life, I still don't know my purpose and I'm still struggling with this and that. So what's different?
John 14:15, Jesus says, if you love me, keep my commandments. It's possible, Pastor Moore, for those individuals to be religiously coming to church, but not obeying God. Obeying God unlocks gifts, callings, and purpose. So all of the biblical expectations that I've been given here at Mount Zion, the commandments, Pastor Moore, that you have encouraged us to obey, I actually obeyed them. And when you obey them, it automatically leads to purpose. So I would challenge those individuals to get out of the religious mindset of just showing up, because showing up doesn't necessarily translate into spiritual growth. Your obedience does.
Wow. So there's another piece that comes to mind. So we know the pastor, we know the requirements, but now there's another. How important now is the body of believers in this whole idea of spiritual maturity and developing to where you are? And I'm thinking because I think you alluded to Ephesians 4:12, where the equipping of the saints, primarily pastor, Jeremiah 3:15, primarily the pastor. But there's a Philippians, there's a Ephesians 4:16, and there's a Hebrews 10:24 and 25 that speaks about the body of Christ. So how important is it for the body, or was it for the body of Christ here at Mount Zion in your spiritual maturation and growth?
Well, Pastor Moore, God has called every believer to not live a life of independence, but to live a life of interdependence. And that speaks to Ephesians chapter 4, verse 16. The whole body is fitted and joined together, whereby each joint supplies. So what I love about God connects us to a church. He connects us to a pastor, but simultaneously, he connects us to other people. And people have been extremely vital in my walk with Christ because, Pastor Moore, they have helped to hold me accountable to the biblical standard. I can remember coming in 13 years ago, Pastor Moore, and there were members in my life group, members within my class, Pastor, that would call me throughout the week to make sure that I was doing the assigned readings, to ensure that I was witnessing and sharing my faith. So those individuals have held me accountable. Over the years, Pastor Moore, they have encouraged me. They have edified me. It amazes me how God connects us to people. I remember there have been some tough days, Pastor Moore, coming into Mount Zion, and God would put a person in my path that would encourage me that didn't know I needed it. So they held me accountable, they encouraged me, they spoke well of me, and they helped me to mature in my walk with Christ. So individuals within the body of Christ have been vitally important in me walking out my purpose and my callings here at Mount Zion.